ever have a friend that the way that you talk about yourself and lower yourself down and are always beating yourself up, would you choose to have a friendship with that person? Absolutely not.
I'm going to be faced with a choice every day that to possibly let you down or let myself down. And I need to be comfortable with letting you down every time.
Every single time.
Every single time.
In the world that we live, we are always trying to prove ourselves to somebody else or always trying to live up to somebody else's standards. And you can't be a full person to those people if you're not a full person to yourself first.
Right. Take it in microbursts. And then over time, what does that do? It builds trust up in the people around you, and it builds trust up in yourself. So where are we right now?
We are in the Delta Lounge in Detroit.
We just got delayed by 2 hours. So welcome back to the Prime Pediatric Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Skip Wyss, and I have my amazing co-host with me, Dr. Julie Wyss, the Dr. Fairy Fingers. How are you today?
Prime Pediatric Podcast?
Yes, what did I say?
Prime Pediatric Podcast.
Oh, welcome back to the Prime Podcast. Sorry. Resiliency, Dr. Julie. We just came off an amazing weekend with Michael Chandler, Dr. Sean Dill, Dr. Lacey Book at a Resiliency Mastermind. We went all the way down to Nashville, Tennessee, and got to spend 2 days diving in with Michael Chandler, world champion, mixed martial artist, championship wrestler, amazing individual, set to fight Conor McGregor here this year in the UFC. Bellator champ, 12-time undefeated in Bellator, like just an absolute amazing person. We got a chance to have a very, very nice mastermind with him and 10 other people, and it was wonderful.
It was
wonderful, and it was all about resiliency, and resiliency is something that I think we all need to work on, because as human beings, we're going to go through tough times in our life all the time. And life has its ups and downs. Life has its super highs and super lows. And it's your ability to bounce back. It's your ability to come back from defeat or come back from lows in our life. Challenges, and to just make it through it and become better. So, Dr. Julie, what's your take on resiliency? I mean, me and you both had some, I would say, pretty big breakthroughs this weekend. We've been to a lot of masterminds. I think we could easily put one on, easily. And what do you think was one of the biggest things with the resiliency in your life that needs to maybe possibly change, increase, get better?
Well, I think we talked a lot about ego and alter ego. And I think in the world that we live, we are always trying to prove ourselves to somebody else or always trying to live up to somebody else's standards. And you can't be a full person to those people if you're not a full person to yourself first.
Right. And we talked about that. Last week, was the common cliche of pouring from an empty cup, which I don't agree with. But I also feel that you need to find a place to refill yourself. And when we talk to elite athletes like Michael Chandler, one of his biggest things that he talked about was his recovery phase and how he recovers after his workouts, how he recovers after his fights, and that the recovery is the key to build the body back, to build it back stronger, to allow the body to relax and just heal. And I think a lot of times people don't take the time to heal. A lot of parents like us don't take time to heal. A lot of small business partners, business people don't take time to heal. And in fact, Michael was talking about in the mixed martial arts, combat world, wrestling world, you set these goals, and the point of the goals is to achieve them, but then nobody takes time to actually celebrate the fact that they achieved the goal or win, and they just move on to the next one. And that is extremely detrimental to both you, the business owner, or the family. Like if you're a parent and you're out there and you set goals for you and your kids, or your kids do really well in school, they get A's, B's, whatever you set the benchmarks at, and if you don't take time to celebrate those things with your children, if you don't take time to celebrate those things with your family or for yourself, you're doing a tremendous amount of disservice. and you're hurting yourself, and you're not taking the time to actually understand that you're proud of yourself. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
So one of the biggest things that I took away from the mastermind was my ability to learn how to trust myself again. I feel that at times I've lied to myself. I have not spoken kindly to myself. I have let myself down, which then in turn lets down people in my personal life. And I think that that is something that a lot of us as parents and a lot of us as small business owners or just people in general, we do this all the time. We have a tendency to let ourselves down. We have a tendency to set benchmarks and not hit them.
Well, I think if I can interrupt,
absolutely.
It's, would you be your friend the way that you talk to yourself? Like, would
No.
you ever have a friend that the way that you talk about yourself and lower yourself down and are always beating yourself up, would you choose to have a friendship with that person? Absolutely not.
Absolutely
and
not.
Yet, we do that to ourselves all the time.
Continue to diminish yourself, right? Continue to break yourself down. So, Dr. Julie, I would like your take on this, Jewel, from a mom's standpoint of resiliency, coming back from a pregnancy, coming back from a birth, raising our kids. Like, where do you find that moms have to really dig down and find resiliency?
Well, I think there needs to be the recognition that it is not self-serving when if you choose to stay at home with your kids, that it is okay to say, okay, I need a night off or I just need a few hours away. That's not self-serving. That's not you being a terrible mom. That's not you like thinking that you don't love your kids. You need that for yourself so that you can show up as a better mom.
You know, Michael had said a phrase there yesterday afternoon where he said, you have to be selfish in order to be selfless. And that's actually really hard as a parent. It's really hard as a dad. And I would say probably as a mom as well, or in a committed relationship or as a couple, that to be selfish is hard because you're trying to provide and help people all the time. You're trying to make your kids happy, make your wife happy, or make your husband happy, and then trying to turn around and be selfless, like being selfish and taking time for yourself feels like you're taking time away.
You can't give and serve everybody if you don't serve yourself first.
Right. So what do you think are some good practices for moms out there and even the clients you work with to better serve themselves, to build themselves up so they're less selfish and more selfless, but they have to, do you follow me on that? Like back and forth, what do you think?
I think the first like gut response I think most moms are going to have is like, well, I don't have time for that.
Right.
And so like we can go back to past podcasts when we talk about student in the calendar, but ultimately like when I see patients or I see clients and that conversation comes up, I usually say, well, who's in charge of the health for the family? And like, it's no offense to anybody, but that usually falls on the shoulders of the mom. And I said, so what happens to you, mom, if you fall apart and you get sick? Well, everything's going to fall apart. So that's all the more reason to just take those little things. And it doesn't have to be a spa day. If it's just, I need 15 minutes to shower, or I want to get back into reading my book. If it's, going to coffee, and like, I'm an introvert. I don't want to have to go out and talk to people and do things if I don't need to. But it's also super important. And I understand that. And I realize that. And I can see that in other women and other moms. And so sometimes it does take that gumption of, going and having coffee. Maybe you don't have conversation. Maybe you just hold space, or you're just, you're there and you can
Just
look
for yourself,
at that
right?
person and you can,
So are you talking going out with another mom or just being in the space by
both.
yourself?
Either one.
Yeah, I think that that's huge. And I think what we need to do is take baby steps to build that self-care up. Build that selfishness up.
That's why, like, every month I hold a ladies' night.
Yes, you do hold a ladies' night.
Yes, part of it for me. So then, it's outside of office. It's a little bit of like me time. I can be around others. I'm in there no matter what, if it's nobody or if it's 20 people.
Yeah, you're there.
But like that's why these things exist and why it is so important. But at that same time, if it's kind of like, ooh, I don't know if I can commit to that. Like, what is one thing? Like, go back to, like, what was that one thing that made you happy before you had kids?
For you, it was a nap and a book.
Back before office and business.
Julie used to take naps every day. when we were in grad school together, and you'd read too.
It was delightful.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's just those kind of things.
So it's
change.
it's finding time to be able to do those things, but change doesn't have to be negative. It's going back to figure those things out.
I also, if you wouldn't mind me just interrupting real quick, I think one of the baby steps is understanding that if you leave your children with your spouse, or let's say you leave your business with your employees for a day or just an hour, it gives you the freedom and trust to know that it's going to be okay when you're not there. And it gives you the freedom and trust to know that your spouse is okay when you're not there. And they would actually prefer it if you did leave from time to time, so that they can build that rapport up with their children as well. I think that, and it's the small things, right? So like, let's for example say like parents, when we're talking about babies sleeping and they're trying a different sleep routine. And I always say, well, try it during a nap, never at night during bedtime, and see how it works out during the nap. It's the same thing for leaving. Like if you're a mom and you feel like you can't get away, or you feel like maybe your spouse doesn't do a good job of parenting.
A spouse, a nanny, a babysitter.
Take it in microbursts. And then over time, what does that do? It builds trust up in the people around you, and it builds trust up in yourself. But even more importantly then is because you're a little bit, what some would say, selfish or self-centered for an hour and a half, you can come home then and be selfless and be more involved, more aware of your children.
If that's the intention, they're not being selfish.
No, it's not.
And again, if we go back to resiliency and everything that we talked about this weekend, you have to think about yourself first. And it doesn't matter what outside family or associates or your friends maybe are saying or telling you what you should or shouldn't do. If all of a sudden it's like, this is what I need to do for myself to show up to be a better person, a better mom, a spouse, those are those things that need to happen.
Yeah, and if you don't do that, what happens is you break trust with yourself. And that was a big thing for me, was understanding how I've basically lost trust in myself at times, knowing that I at some point will let myself down. I at some point will mess this up, and trying to understand that I don't have to allow myself to do that. I don't have to know that my body or my mind's going to break down, that to have that trust to know that I'm going to put in the work to make sure I have the foundation built to continue on doing what I'm doing.
Well, that's resiliency, because ultimately we talk about success and failure. You can't have success without failure.
No.
So while that may be a negative, those things need to happen. It's just in that time of that failure or that stressor, or when you're feeling that certain way, of learning the lesson. Why do you feel that way? And then from that lesson, that's only where you can have growth and development and more success. And if that's parenting, if that's business, that's the only way that you're going to get ahead.
And this is what makes you an amazing coach, because you work with a lot of moms. You work a lot with a lot of mom business owners. And it's yourself too. I mean, we've been in business for 16 years. We have a very successful practice. We have multiple different successful things that we're a part of now. But
it wasn't always easy.
No, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me either. And I thought at times where I might have had the easier part of it, or there was envy built up between both of us. That's a big thing too, is that to show resiliency in your relationship is that when there's envy built up between the both of you, where I would think to myself, well, she just gets to stay home with the kids all day. I have to go into the office and take care of all these people. Meanwhile,
I'm thinking, he gets to go and serve the community, and I have to stay home
and
with
be
the kids.
And be with the kids. So at that time, when those things happen to us, or those things happen to you in your relationships, in your marriage, and in your business, you have to be able to bridge the gap to be selfish with each other, which means pull yourselves away as a couple from your kids and take time to be around each other and reconnect that way, which is extremely important, which then allows us to reconnect with our children. And that's why a lot of people will ask us, they're like, hey, Skip and Julie, you guys leave a lot. You guys are on the road a ton. You guys travel a lot. Yeah, we do travel a lot. We travel a lot for education. We travel a lot for educational purposes and teaching other people and coaching other people. We travel a lot to be around our coaches and mentors. But also, we travel sometimes once a year for vacation away from our kids. Because on vacation, I'll be honest with you, our kids kind of stress me out.
We tried that a couple of times. Well, but I mean, that is what we have set up. Like, that is our plan. That is how that we can be successful together as a family, as a mom and a dad. that we can set our kids up for success, so that they can understand and see, and they can see some of the failures and be able to have a plan of, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm not going to do, and it's all life lessons.
It is life lessons, and it's another important thing that was talked about is I asked that question, is how do I build trust back up in myself? How do I build trust back up in myself knowing I'm not going to let myself down, which then leads to me letting you down, letting our kids down, letting the people in our business down, maybe even possibly letting patients or clients down with lack of follow-through. And it's simple steps that I got to learn and develop from Michael talking about the small things he does in his daily habit and then routine that allow him to keep trust with himself and holding himself accountable. Because like his big thing was, he talked about, he went 365 days with taking his supplements every day. He takes supplements in the morning and supplements at night. But the reason why he brought that up is because he started with a small task to complete over a long period of time and making a commitment to never not do it. And it could be something as simple as drinking 25 or 40 ounces of water a day.
And for some people, it could be making your bed. Like I heard that. Like I was like, what do you mean you don't make your bed? But I understand. Like there's some people, so it doesn't have to be something big, right? Sometimes it's just the little things to start to develop that habit, the routine, to be able to see. And it's then you need to also recognize, like, while yes, it's making the bed, maybe you needed new bed sheets, or maybe like you want some chocolate, whatever that thing, or maybe you withhold until you've done making your bed for 90 days, and then you go and you get that coffee. It doesn't have to always be like a food reward. It could just be, okay, I get 15 minutes, or I get a half an hour to read a book, or I get to go and do these, this or that. It's, if you've made that commitment to change or develop a habit, there needs to be a reward on the other side. Like we can go into brain development and how all those things work, but if you've made that commitment to do something over and over and over and you accomplish it, and then you deprive yourself of being able to have that reward, then your subconscious is like, why the heck did I do this to begin with? Why would I want to continue to do this? Why would I want to do anything like this ever again? So that reward is just as important, just as vital as actually developing that habit.
Well, and actually, I would say that your inner child, if you went to more of a psychology behind it, like if you went Freudian or different things, your inner child's then let down. So your subconscious self, your small self that looked for rewards when you were a kid, got rewarded when you were a kid for completing tasks, felt good, felt amazing, parents celebrated it. If you don't take the time in yourself to celebrate it, if you don't take the time to recognize it, it's a problem. And no, you don't have to recognize it for an entire month. If you do, cool. If you feel like your birthday needs to be celebrated for a whole week, which mine does, it's needed, you know.
Absolutely.
But it's one of those, it's those things that allow us to build ourselves back up, build self-trust, but build self-love. Because if you're not happy with the person in the mirror, if you look in the mirror and realize that the only person on earth that is responsible for that person looking back at themselves is you, it's a hard thing to look at. Like even me looking at this camera right now and looking at myself talking to you, I have to trust that man that's in front of me. Same thing with you. And build that trust up and know that that person in front of me will never let me down. And I have to rekindle that relationship and understand it. And as soon as you start loving yourself just as much as you love your children or your spouse, your wife, your husband, whatever it is, or the people and your clients in your business, you're never going to achieve or get past the goals you set out to get to. You'll never be happy.
See, and I remember like the first like quote I think of the day was, "Who I am, whose I am." And I think just remembering that of you have nobody else to please or to serve except for one person.
Yeah, and the other one is that really resonated with me was, I'm going to be faced with a choice every day that to possibly let you down or let myself down. And I need to be comfortable with letting you down every time.
Every single time.
Every single time. That I need to be comfortable to let down the people in my life and not let myself down. And it works it works then inversely, where if I don't let myself down, I don't let the people in my life down. And then I don't live with the shame. I don't live with the burden. I don't live with that ability to be like, man,
guilt.
Today just didn't go how I wanted it to go. Today just wasn't a fun day. Today And I've had those days.
And
we all have, and we concentrate on those days sometimes, and those things are extremely unhealthy and detrimental to who we are.
But again, if we go back to what this whole weekend was about, it was
Mm-hmm.
resiliency.
It was about
and
rebuilding.
So that you can see that as a failure, you can see that as what a negative, but
Mm-hmm.
that is a lesson. And if you don't learn that lesson, God is going to have it continue to
Continue to
show up in
repeat.
your life until you take the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And once you learn the lesson, then and only then can you have growth, and you can succeed, and you can
learn
get
the lesson
farther.
and walk through it.
Mhm.
Win, beat the lesson. Whether the lesson's negative or positive, learn from it, like you said, and walk through it. And then God gives you the ability to keep moving forward, and He's going to give you new life lessons. I think, like you talk about, saying thank you every morning, thanking God for the lessons that you're going to learn through the day, and just understanding that you've been put here for a purpose. You've been put here for a reason, and you're resilient, and you're a survivor, and you're going to do all of this. And as long as you start loving yourself and finding that trust back in yourself, and I think it comes down to, if you think about last point here, even when we build a relationship with each other, if you don't trust me, it's really hard to love me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And if I don't trust you, it's really hard to love you. And if you don't trust yourself, it's really hard to love yourself. So stop the negative talk, build yourself up, take care of yourself, love yourself, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, and let it build. Build a foundation of selfishness to be selfless with your family, your friends, and the people in your business. So when you show up, you can give, and then when you leave, you can take the time for yourself as well.
Let's call it self-work. That sounds like a good word, a good way to describe it, that it's self-work.
Self-work.
Because you're working on yourself, and it's not selfish.
Sometimes it's heavy work, sometimes it's light work, sometimes it's fun work, sometimes the work sucks. You know?
But again, learn the lesson, become resilient, so that you can adapt and grow, and you can beat those challenges.
Anything else? Not today. Well, this again was the Prime Podcast, coming at you from the Delta Sky Lounge here at the Detroit Airport, because we're delayed. But tune in next week. We'll be right back in. So take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.